Hey guys, this is my top 5 list for horror books released in 2020. Here we go. This book has a few trigger warnings in it. Actually, you know what? All of these books have trigger warnings. I'm going to put this at the beginning. This is at the beginning now. Okay, so in this list are my top 5 horror books, not of all time, and the list was just made in 2020, but specifically of books that were released in 2020, plus a couple bonus books on the list as well. Quick caveat, obviously everyone has different opinions about what horror is, and whether or not a book was scary or creepy or horrific or whatever, and some people think that one book is, but another isn't, and those same people may disagree on. This is my list. I really enjoyed these books. If you have a different list or a book that didn't make my list and you want to add it, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'd love to hear what your favorite horror book of 2020 was. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce my list, starting with number 5 and then moving forward to the number 1 spot. Number 5 on my list is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This is the same author that wrote The Twisted One, so if you enjoyed that book, I think this one maybe is better. I enjoyed it more, I think. There's a lot that I really liked about this book. I liked the ideas that were in it. I really enjoyed the setting as well. The Wonder Museum is really good. The characters are really likable. I like Kara. It's perfect setting for a creepy story. It's really, really good for that. This book is weird. It's a little nerdy. It's definitely creepy. It involves, I'd say, like hellish Narnia. So if you enjoy kind of the fantasy, there's like a fantasy horror trope overlap thing going on here. I really liked that, and I really enjoyed this story overall. Another thing I really liked about The Hollow Places is I like that there's a lot of humor sprinkled throughout this book. That's something I really enjoyed. Sometimes when you have multiple genres kind of overlapping, when it's humor and kind of fantasy and horror or whatever, that's what the three are, I think, in this case. When they overlap, sometimes it's bad. In this case, I think it was really well written. Number 4 on my list is Mexican Gothic. I really liked this book because it starts off with kind of a traditional haunted house vibe and quickly twists into something else altogether. Moreno Garcia has really descriptive and eerie language. It makes you feel like you're actually there, you're actually present, and I really enjoyed this new take on kind of Gothic, Baroque horror. This book is very chilling and grotesque. Just a couple quick notes. The reason this isn't higher on the list, some people loved this book and it was their number 1. I think the start was a little bit slow for me personally. I also felt like there's a mystery element to this book, and I felt like the mystery was really easy. It took away from the story a little bit for me, but it totally belongs in this list still. It's an amazing book, really, really well written, just not my number 1. Next on the list, Stephen King. Of course, he put out If It Bleeds this year, and it totally belongs on the list. Technically not a single story, it's actually 4 novellas. The first novella in particular, really, really, really good. If you don't read the rest of it and just read that, you will have still walked away with an incredible story. In classic Stephen King fashion, they're creepy, they're beautifully written, very vivid novellas. If you enjoyed The Outsiders, the 3rd novella follows the story of Holly, kind of continuing her story on, so that is really good as well. Number 3, easy choice, If It Bleeds. Number 2 on my list is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is an excellent, excellent book. I love reading stories about Native Americans, so that's a bit of icing on the cake, but the story stands alone as a horror story by itself. It's amazing. This story takes a really unique take on the horror genre, but still with kind of slasher elements in it, lots of blood and gore, things like that. There's some very visceral and disturbing story type elements. And what I really liked about it is not only is the story itself, kind of disturbing and horrific, but the writing style lends to it. It allows you to kind of read the story in the way that kind of adds to the jumpiness of the horror, and I really appreciated that. That was really done well. This book is very bloody and brutal and wonderfully written. The number 1 book on my list this year is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This book took me by surprise. Even a few chapters in, I would have been shocked hearing from myself that this was my number 1. A few chapters in, it still kind of felt like a cheesy Steel Magnolia type thing, but it is so much darker than that. It takes such a dark turn, and I love it. This book is over the top brutal and fun. The idea here is Desperate Housewives meets Dracula, and it is excellent storytelling. Very brutal, very beautiful, wonderfully, definitely an amazing book. The book does start pretty light. Like I mentioned, the first few chapters, you're like, when is this going to pick up? But it does get there. It's really well done, I think. Kind of that trigger warning, although I suppose it goes for the whole list. This book has a lot of horrific stuff in it, so just be aware of that. All right, there are 2 runners up on the list. I told you there's gonna be 2 books. They just didn't quite make the list, but they're both excellent books. I definitely recommend them. One of them is Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay. This is maybe it just hit too close to home. I don't know. It's a pandemic type novel or virus, zombies-esque type situation. Really well written. I recommend it if you're interested in that kind of post-apocalyptic kind of novel. It's really well done, and I think you'll enjoy it. The other one that didn't quite make the list was Mallory. It's the sequel to Bird Box. Also really well done. Also a great book. If you enjoyed Bird Box, whether that's, even if you haven't read the first book yet, I think you can potentially, maybe you should read the first book first. But go ahead and jump into this as well. This is a really well-written book too. This is my list of the top 5 horror books written in 2020. If you enjoyed this list, feel free to like and subscribe. Also, shoot me a comment down below. Let me know which of these books you read, which ones you liked. If there's something that should be on the list that wasn't, I need to hear all that stuff in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay safe out there.